Hello and welcome to Jeanette's TV and Jeanette's TV podcast. I'm your host, Jeanette Burke, live on location in Richmond Hill, Ontario at the Richmond Hill Centre for the Performing Arts for the movie Charlotte, commemorating Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day and National Film Day in Canada. The movie Charlotte is a depiction of Charlotte Salomon's life as a teenager in Germany, where due to anti-Semitism, she was forced to leave and go to the south of France, during which time she depicts her trials and tribulations through her artistic paintings that tell the story of her family, her friends, and herself before she was taken to Auschwitz at age 26. We will be talking with the film's producer and director in just a moment. But before we get into today's episode and hear from our sponsors, I want to remind you that if you haven't already done so, please click the link below to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also support us by purchasing a Jeanette's TV and podcast t-shirt and sweatshirt like the one we have here with the JTV logo and tagline, or you can also get one with an inspirational saying made by me or a previous guest in a previous episode. The choice is yours, along with your size and color, and all orders are conveniently shipped straight to your front door and include shipping and handling fees. For more information on how to order, please check the show notes below and the links. Now on with today's episode.
David Bezmozgis, the screenwriter of Charlotte.
Welcome to Jeanette's TV and Jeanette's TV podcast. David, so you're one of the writers, and I wanted to ask a few questions about the importance of bringing the story of Charlotte to light now in the face of anti-Semitism.
Well, I think definitely in the face of anti-Semitism, which has never really gone away. I think as the people who survived the Holocaust die off, I think as that story seems to feel more and more remote, telling stories like Charlotte should make it feel more present, more intimate to people, and especially a story like Charlotte's about a young woman that still had so much life in her and had so much talent. I think more than anything, for younger viewers, it also makes that story feel like something that they should be able to relate to.
And how was it taking that story and making it for a film? What was the process, and what were the pros and cons of it, and how hard was it?
Well, it's an animated feature, which is very unusual for it not to be a children's film, and this isn't. It's a film for, teens and adults. So what we did was we adapted Charlotte's own book, which is some people believe to be the first graphic novel, Life or Theater. So there was a story there that she'd both drawn and also written. So it was taking that book and trying to adapt it to the screen and finding out whatever other information there was about Charlotte's life and bring that into it as well. But the film covers her sadly brief life, but really from, her childhood all the way to mid-1940s when she was killed at Auschwitz at the age of 26.
So can you tell us a little bit more about some of the other perspectives that were brought in? I know that not everyone working on this project actually has a Jewish background.
No. So in fact, the producer, Julia Rosenberg, had wanted to do this story for a long time. She says since her own bat mitzvah, when she was given this Life or Theater as a gift. I'm Jewish, that's true.
As am I.
As are you, though you did not have anything to do with the film. You were just interviewing us. Yeah. But to hear Rana, who is one of the directors, is Muslim, Pakistani. Eric Warren, not Jewish. So most of the other people who were involved in the film were not Jewish, but they came to the story and were moved by it for their very own reasons, and the fact that it's it's just a very affecting human story about Charlotte, not only in the sense of what was lost in terms of a really talented artist. But also this, the story of her family is quite turbulent, and deals with depression and anxiety and subjects that I think we see a lot of right now for completely different reasons. But I think for that reason as well, also very relatable.
How do you depict the drawings and what they have to say?
So that decision was made by the directors and the animators. And it was decided that they would not try to replicate Charlotte's style all the way through the film, but they would make a distinction between how they tell the story and how like Charlotte is depicted and the characters are depicted, which is a style completely different than the way Charlotte drew. But her art, when it's shown in the film, there's some really beautiful transitions, would be done in her style. So you would really feel the difference, and you'd feel the impact of that when you saw it on screen.
And how were you able to find her original drawings?
Well, so, there is the book, Life for Theater, which I think, fortunately is in print and people could get still. There's the Jewish Museum, I believe, in Amsterdam that keeps as many of the original gouaches. So they're accessible, so we could always refer to them. And the illustrators referred to them a great deal and tried to not just imitate, recreate what they look like, but also, the brush strokes and the way that she
her style.
Her style, yeah, all aspects of her style.
Mm-hmm. And tonight is your opening here, there's a screening here, and you're going to have a Q&A afterwards. Yeah. And what do you want people to walk away with? What's the message you want them to leave with?
Well, I think the message for all of us who made the Charlotte film is to have people become more curious about Charlotte Salomon and her art. She's, an incredibly talented artist, not as well known as I think she should be, which was really the motivating factor behind making the film, is to bring her story and her art to as many people as possible.
Yes, because I would say that a lot of people are familiar with the story of Anne Frank and maybe some other Holocaust stories because they've seen them portrayed in movies like Schindler's List. But we need to keep these stories going because unfortunately a lot of the Holocaust people who survived the Holocaust are passing on due to being of old age. How would you like to see the Holocaust stories kept alive other than through film? How can we do that? How can we make sure that for generations people know what happened?
Well, I think there's been a lot of art that has already been made about the Holocaust, so there's plenty to go back and look at. And I think there are still stories. The Holocaust was not monolithic. I mean, there were, so many countries involved. And the Holocaust stories are different pretty much in some level of different in every place. So Charlotte's story, for instance, is unusual or seems unusual, and that so much of it takes place in the south of France, right? So she's a German girl who ends up in the south of France for a period, which is not a story that we have seen told before, I don't think, not very much. And so we get another perspective on what it means, what the Holocaust means, but ultimately what the Holocaust means is that if you were a Jew in any part of Europe, you were marked for death. And whether you were in the south of France or whether you were in Germany, whether you were in Poland, ultimately your fate would be the same. The details how that happened varied, but the result, sadly, was the same.
Yes, it's sadly, as you put it. So in closing, I just wanted to ask you, do you have a personal story of the Holocaust from your grandparents or something that you would want to share?
Well, so I was born in Latvia, in Riga, Latvia, the former Soviet Union. So, I mean, there are many stories. I mean, I went back to Latvia for the first time in over 20 years and went to, for instance, the small town where my grandfather was from on my maternal side, and saw this, little town of Baltaneva, where all the Jews who did not leave, there were, roughly, my grandfather would say, about 100 families. There weren't that many, but he left, his parents left, and another family left, and everybody else who stayed behind was killed. that's the reality of the Holocaust. So, you know, my story of the Holocaust is I'm only alive by virtue of luck and chance. I should not be alive.
Yeah, and so many people feel that way, and there's often a guilt associated with that too. Can you speak about the guilt that people have for survival?
Well, I don't know. I can't speak about it because it's not mine to talk about. But I think the other thing worth talking about when the Holocaust is also what we see in the Charlotte film. It's the lives that people led. It's a vibrant world that no longer exists. It's a world of, and it wasn't monolithic. The people were all different. Some were religious, some were not religious. There were different political parties. It was a rich tapestry of life that was unified by the fact that these people were Jews. And sadly, yeah, that world is gone. But I think learning as much about how people lived is as important, and even more important than the way that they were killed, because that's what we should celebrate. Knowing what a rich and interesting and vibrant world the Jewish world was of Europe, and to be proud of it. So I think focusing only on how these people died also does a disservice to how they lived in the world that they created.
That's well said. Well, let us know now where we can find Charlotte, because not everyone's here tonight and they want to go and see it. So I'd like to give that a little bit of a push for you and tell like a website or something where we can go and see it.
Well, I think Charlotte is available for streaming. I think anybody can get it off the major streaming services like Apple and Amazon and that sort of thing. So its theatrical run happened last year. It played at TIFF. It was nominated for multiple awards. It's a terrific film and well worth seeing, and also very, as I said, an unusual film in that it's an animated feature for grown-ups with actors, really prominent actors.
Yes, how did you get Keira Knightly involved?
Right, so Keira Knightly, who in English voices the Charlotte role, we got Keira involved because Keira loved the story and loved the script. And it's her first role in animation. She'd never done animation before. And so, yeah, she does a phenomenal job. So, yeah, the cast is tremendous. And the film is really worth seeing.
And I know you had some other projects, but what do you have coming up after this one?
Well, I have my own. I'm not just a writer, but a director and an author. I have a project that I'd still like to do, which I hope will happen, an adaptation of my novel, The Betrayers, which takes place in Crimea, which was, Ukraine and no longer is. So bringing that to the screen is the next thing I'd like to do.
Well, I wish you well with that. And I want to thank you so much for coming and talking with me today. And I know your film's about to start, so I'm going to let you go. I want to thank everybody for joining us as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jeanette, for having me on.
You're so welcome. Thanks for being with us today on Jeanette's TV and Jeanette's TV podcast. I'm your host, Jeanette Burke, signing off. Please remember to like, comment, and share all our posts with your family and friends. You will find us everywhere. On the streaming side or TV side, we are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Vimeo, Pinterest, Instagram, and the list goes on. On the audio podcast side, you will find us on iHeartRadio, Apple, Buzzsprout, BuzzFeed, Anchor, Spotify, and that list goes on. For a complete list of where to watch and listen to us, please check the link below. And until next time, continue to be fabulous.